Hey, it's Dr. Tangie Great, and welcome to Grate Conversations, where me and you will talk about living well, meaningful relationships, and small practices to shape a good life. If any of those things sound good to you, I want you to join this community. So remember to like, share this with a friend, maybe two, and subscribe. Come on, I know I got something good to tell you. Let's get into today's episode where we are talking about faith. So, episode one, we did a little intro. I explained to you how things are going to flow. We are talking about the architecture of joy. The first pillar last episode was support, and the second pillar is a faith. I know. Did you see faith coming? I definitely didn't, but this is a spirit led podcast as well. And am I saying that with a little wine in my glass? I absolutely am because it's truth. You can't have joy without faith, in my opinion. The two and two go hand in hand together. And me, I consider myself to be a Christian. If you're not a Christian, this is not saying, hey, you got to believe what I believe, even though I think you should, because Jesus is awesome. But I believe you need to have faith in something other than yourself to truly experience joy outside of what your circumstances look like. And I want to share a personal story about faith specifically. I am going to say that this is a trigger warning because I will be talking about child loss. And if that's something that is a sensitive subject for you, or you're currently in the middle of a grieving journey related to child loss, then go ahead, step away, set this episode down, and just go back and listen to episode one if you missed it, or head on into episode three. But let's get started. So in 2025, for anyone new here that doesn't follow me on my social media, I was pregnant with my son, and I had a late term pregnancy loss with it. Okay. So in 2025, I was pregnant. I was super excited about it with my second child. It was a boy, and I was just over the moon, going through all the good feelings, all the good joys. I made it past the first trimester, which is supposed to be like the scary zone where you don't tell people, you don't announce it publicly. Made it past that. We go in for our 19-week ultrasound, and that was literally the worst day of my life. I found out that my son had several birth defects and he wasn't going to survive. And at that moment, I really thought that it wasn't real life. Like, I really honestly, I couldn't believe that it was really happening to me. Like, you know how you're in the ultrasound and they're asking you all these questions, and like things, like in my gut, I knew something was wrong. The nurse is asking me all these questions about, did I experience any fluid loss or anything like that? And I'm looking at the ultrasound picture, and it doesn't look like how AJ looked when he was that size or age. It looks completely different. And I'm thinking maybe I just remembered it wrong. But no, it wasn't that I remembered it wrong. Um, my baby wasn't going to survive. And that moment was terrible. It was despair. It was, I prayed that my baby will be saved, and he wasn't. He was here to teach something to me very specific about joy, which is why I'm choosing to share it with you. But it was the hardest season of my adult life because for the first time, I had to really grieve something. I don't think before experiencing child loss in that way, especially when it was all of a sudden, was anything that I could have prepared myself for. If you have ever grieved anything, like as an adult, then I feel like you have two choices you can make. You can lean closer into your faith, or you can pull back and be like, oh, God is a liar. Or you can move in and realize that there is a part of your faith that you haven't even experienced yet because you haven't been at the bottom on the floor crying your eyes out with no explanation in sight, no one to save you, nothing besides your faith. And there's a few lessons that I really learned in that is that you can still access joy even when you're grieving and you don't have to feel guilty about it. I think that that was a hard lesson for me to learn because I wanted to make sure, because I'm a positive person, that I wasn't just reaching for the most feel good emotion before I actually dealt with the pain that I was feeling. And so I went to therapy, by the way. So I worked this out with therapists, which is why I feel comfortable sharing it with you here now. Um, I just didn't want to bypass that. I was so nervous about feeling that I was going to feel sad forever, that when joy came, I was I was scared of it. I was like, okay, am I truly healing or am I just trying to hurry up and not feel pain anymore? And it was the first time I could have a real example for myself, like when people say duality, and joy and sorrow are one of those things that they can walk side by side. And this probably isn't going to be a really long episodes because the episodes on the Great Conversations, they're not going to be long. We got a lot of stuff to do. We don't have to talk for a long time. But when we do talk, I want them to be meaningful. And what was I saying? Like I said, we're going to get sidetracked. If that's the part of this personality, I'm a little bit nervous again. Okay, let me just take a deep breath. Okay, Tange. What I'm trying to say is that you don't have to feel guilty about feeling happy when you're grieving something terrible. I believe that it was the most eye opening thing that ever could have happened to me. Like, when I think about the woman who I was before my child loss and after my child loss, it just turned me into a different person. I was able to just be more compassionate and truly just see people through the lens of how I believe God sees people, and just have so much grace and compassion and understanding, which is something that I feel like, because I'm a positive person, I think it's easy for people to assume that assume that I'm also caring and, nice to everyone, which is true to some extent. But I have some selfishness about me. If we are close in real life, you're shaking your head like, yep, Tangie can be selfish. I can be selfish. I can be self centered. And going through this experience of grief and using it as fuel to lean into my faith to get out of it really changed and shaped me. And so when you are trying to experience joy and radiate joy, I think it's very important to have a strong faith foundation, especially if you are a believer, especially if you call yourself a Christian. I was listening to another podcast episode with Meghan Ashley. The name of her podcast is um I can't think of the name of her podcast right now, probably because I'm nervous. But the name of her podcast is what? What is it? What is the name of her podcast? In Totality. I know I would get it. In Totality. That's the name of the podcast. And she was talking about how we are so quick to like thank God and be joyful when things are going so great in our lives and be like, oh my goodness, everything's great. I love God. You know, I'm God's favorite, all those things. We love to say that when things are going amazing in our life, right? And when things are going like a shit show, we're like, oh man, God has abandoned me. Why is this happening to me? Why me? All those things. And really, the truth of the matter is that if you are a believer, what you deserve is actually nothing. You really don't deserve any of that. What you deserve is what God saved us from. That's what we truly deserve. And anything outside of that is what is coincidence. That's not what we deserve. And you gotta listen to the episode. I hope I'm saying this right. But when I heard her say it, I'm gonna put it in the show notes. The producer is gonna figure out how to say that because I don't want to mess up what she said. But it just really struck me because it's like those. Let me try to say it in a different way. My husband always says that life is some shit, right? And when he used to say that when we were in college, and he says this now, I used to be thinking to myself, oh, that's such a pessimistic way to think. But honestly, he was just being his wise self, which I hate to admit, but it's true. And life is actually really crappy most of the time. But those few moments of joy, of excitement, of things that we get that we don't deserve, like that's the gift that God gives us. And the rest of it is like what we really like, that's the baseline. So we got to learn how to be happy and rejoice in the terrible moments because anything else is just icing on top. Because the truth of the matter is, like, God really died for us. And this is not supposed to be like a Bible based podcast. That's not what this is about. This is just one episode. But actually learning how to not be so self focused on myself is truly what helped me get through my grieving process because I realized, you know, how the Bible verse says, you know, you're supposed to think on good things and not to feel anxious about anything. And so I'm thinking about, okay, let me recall good things in my personal life to make myself feel better. Well, guess what? I tried that when I was on the floor crying every single day for a month straight when my son passed away. And that didn't work. But you know what did help me feel good? What did bring me joy is when I sat down and I thought about the pain that Jesus went through to die for me specifically, for me who deserves nothing, for me who didn't do anything for it. I thought about that. And that brought me joy to know that someone loved me enough to die for me. Not anything in my life. And that just completely and utterly changed how I see everything. And I'm not perfect. I got a long way to go. For whatever reason, it's so effed up that Christianity is the only religion in America where you say you're a Christian and people just assume that you're supposed to be this type of way. And honestly, it's Christianity or Americanized Christianity's fault. Religious people fault why it's like that because some religious people put Christianity up on a pedestal, but that's not what what's going on here. Okay, That's not what's happening here. I'm a real person just trying to figure out that because I had an extreme grief thing happen, I was able to meet Jesus in a real way. And I'm just sharing that because I know I'm not the only person who's going through a hard time. I mean, look around, the world's on fire. And it's just the opportunity for you to build it as that lens too. So there it is about faith. I hope that makes sense. I know this isn't a super long episode, but those are some things that I wanted to share with you about faith because joy is not something that you can only access in the good moments. It's something that you can access in the hard moments, but reframing to look at God in those hard moments instead of yourself may really bring you some relief that you didn't imagine. Oh, and then also one more thing that's coming to mind. I shared it privately with another one of my friends who went through child loss as well. And you know that story about how Abraham had waited his entire life. He was like 90 or 100 for a son. And then God was like, okay, you got to sacrifice your son. And then a ram came and he didn't need to sacrifice his son. He sacrificed the ram instead. And so when I was going through that terrible moment of trying to pray um, for my son to be saved, because I was like, ooh, it's the same. Um, and that didn't happen. I was on ChatGPT. I'm not afraid to say, it's ashamed to say that sometimes I use ChatGPT to help me understand the Bible. And I can't remember my exact prompt. I um, wanted to know another way to look at it. And one way that really helped me find joy in that hard moment was that what if the ram in the bush is something that you don't even know? Oh, okay, let me say it. Let me just take a deep breath so I can say it right. What if the ram in the bush is different than what you're expecting, but it's something that God is going to give you that's going to be able to allow you to access joy? Like in my situation, I thought my ram in the bush was going to be able, that my son would still be alive and I would have a little baby, right? But that necessarily was not the gift that God gave me. The gift that God gave me was the faith to know that I can get through the hardest season of my life and maintain my joy and get closer to Him. Maybe you're in a different hard season in your life and it's that job and you don't get that job. But when you open up your mind to think, okay, like there's a ram for me, it's in the Bible. God said I can access it. Let me pray a different prayer to say, hey, what is my ram in the bush? What do you have for me that is going to allow me to experience some type of peace in this hard situation? And once I changed my prayer, it truly helped me get through that. And so I'm sharing it with you because it is one of the only things that I remember that I prayed for and meditated on during that time. Well, I'm not gonna lie. It's the only thing that I feel comfortable sharing about that time, about the relationship that me and God are building, that I feel comfortable sharing. And so I'm sharing it. Ooh, I can't believe I just told that story on the podcast. What is going on? But that's what we said. We said this is real life and we're walking out together. I don't have the answers. So I hope that helped. Now we're going to keep it a little light by Tangie's one great thing that I'm loving. I know that was a hard shift, but I'm going to get better. I promise, guys. I'm all over the place. You know this about me if you follow me on social media. So, the great thing that I'm loving right now, I know it's so cliche. Get a close up of the camera so there's no glare. I'm a pharmacist and I picked some supplements, but the Black Girl Vitamin One a Day gummies, I'm obsessed with them. I am just like any average doctor who tells people how to give advice, but they're terrible at taking the advice that they give. That is me. And when it comes to taking something every single day, especially supplements, I am terrible at it. This has been the only brand that has allowed me to take a multivitamin every day. Even when I was pregnant, I did not take my prenatals daily. But once I discovered this brand, or not discovered, because I feel like you see black girl vitamins all the time, but I didn't believe the hype. But I think what makes this so good is that the gummies taste good and they're gummies. I know there's a lot of controversy behind should you use gummies or should you not use gummies. As a pharmacist, yes, a non gummy formulation is superior. But if you're not taking the superior version because you forget to take it, then doesn't that kind of defeat the point? And so I love a gummy because I have been through 3 or 4 of these little containers and I've never been that consistent. So, highly, highly, highly recommend. This is linked in my Amazon storefront. If you go to the Liberated Pharmacist on Instagram, you'll be able to click and find this below. Again, none of these great things that I'm loving are sponsored, so I truly do love them and I just want to share them with you. And of course, before you end, I want you to make sure you take some time and ask yourself, what is one thing about my faith I can use to live well? And remember, living well doesn't happen by accident. I'll see you next week.